being with one person, being with 20 people, totally different than being alone in a room looking at a laptop.
Yeah.
I've spent, many years alone in a room looking at a laptop
Yeah.
for work. I can tell you there's not much emotion there. It's all just draining, your energy level going down, and you're not getting all that much reward.
Yeah, you're not getting the kind of positive feedback that's necessary to help you hold on to that.
Yeah, and you can't participate and give that to somebody else too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to be open. I'm not. I mean, even though I think it's urgent that we move on and get this stuff done, I don't think it is so urgent that we can sacrifice all of it. I mean, it's all a piece, I think. We have to learn to be in community with each other. We have to learn to appreciate each other. We have to learn new ways of kindness and new ways of joining with each other. And that's as much part of permaculture to me as gardening or building houses or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the interpersonal aspect is enormous.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being an introvert and then buying a large plot of land in Montana somewhere and just me doing permaculture. It's like, no, that's stupid.
And I find that's, for a lot of people, though, that's a stumbling block. It's how do we own things? Ownership, I'm finding, is a huge thing. And we're taught that because ownership is sort of a badge of belonging to this culture. If you own a house on a lot, that's one thing. But if you own 20,000 acres and a 4,000 square foot house, then you've really done something. You've really become a real human being. And I think that it is that kind of ownership. I mean, again, that's taking us back into that whole discussion of capitalism and how it has changed the human experience. So when I talk to people about community, I mean, like here, I live in a community to where the only thing I own in this community is my house. This land belongs to all of us. It's held in common. If I want to do something on the land, on the 10 acres that surrounds my house and the other members of this community's house, I have to ask permission. I have to talk to people. I have to explain to them why I want to do it and all of that. Well, that's sort of a pain sometimes. You really think your idea is the best idea of anyone, and can't I just go do it? Trust me. So learning how to sit down with people and to articulate the reasons I want to do certain things may not be that critical, that particular tree that I want to put in that particular place. But the process of working with others and finding out that other people have good ideas too, and they might have a better idea than you about where that tree belongs or where whatever. But it's mainly how do we start trusting each other to make decisions together. And that's the marvelous thing about having commons, because no one owns it. You all own it. And so all your decision making is all of you making a decision. Well, it's not the efficiency that we're brought up to believe is the prime directive, Efficiency is what we're after, not actually building community are the best way to do things. So, yeah.
There's a guy who just bought a lot of land and he's trying to set up a almost semi-feudal type permaculture. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like the paradise I would want to be a part of. Unless I was that guy, I don't know that I would be into that. And even then, I would be concerned that I would be harming people
Either that or you're, the asshole of the universe, but to all of those people.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those people are looking and, look at that big shot. If it wasn't for him, we could all, be dancing and singing. Yeah, it's a hard one. And I see more and more communities that start off that way. And it isn't usually start off in that kind of feudal mindset, except to the extent that ownership is feudal. I mean, it is part of the feudal system. And so owning becomes a very important thing in people's worldview. And so someone buys a piece of land and then invites a bunch of people to join him or her in creating something new. But they're not creating anything new, as long as he owns the title and has the right to kick people off. I mean, it's the same as having a job. You have the security of your boss. If your boss doesn't want you there, you no longer have security. So if no one owns it, nobody can enforce you off of it. Mm-hmm. So
that's a great analogy, by the way. Yeah, you don't own your work.
No, you don't. You don't. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's a very tenuous position we hold in this culture. I mean, at any moment, they can say, sorry, we don't need, and they're doing it every day now. Downsizing, they call it, but there is no security.
In the country, I guess I hate to go to like revolutionary times, but before that happened, your stuff could be seized, everything. You really didn't have property rights to the degree you have them now in the country, but not necessarily in the culture as a whole. And I feel like that's a more evolved step, but it's a transitional thing, it feels like to me.
Well,
towards the commons.
Well, we had commons. Most of New England had huge commons at the beginning of this.
Was it shared pasture?
Yeah, shared pasture, shared agricultural lands, shared town hall. I mean, it was. I saw it in Russia under the collective farms. That everything was common. Nobody owned anything there, and it was. The state ultimately owned everything, and it was the state and Khrushchev's weird ideas about collectivization that sort of turned all that south. But that sort of went from feudal to communalism and then communism. And where we are now is pretty much, we think we own things, but eminent domain trumps all. If the county, the city, the state, the federal government decides they need it more than you, they have the legal right to take it away from you. They've got to give you some recompense, but and then property tax is like having a lien on your property. They can take it
at any point.
Yeah, if you miss your job this year, they may give you 2 years to skip your taxes. But ultimately, they can take your land away, and that happened all over this country in the last Great Depression. People's lands were auctioned off on the county steps for tax. And these are people who were prosperous and were doing well until, the drought and the sand blowing in this part of the country, and banks failing. Now all of a sudden nobody has anything. The county still has the right to come in and repossess your land if you're not paying your tax. And that's the only place I'm vulnerable, and everyone else here is vulnerable on this place. because the commons are held in a nonprofit. They can't be seized. They don't pay tax. But each individual homeowner here has to pay property tax. So that's another story. So again, there's a sort of invisible lien always on property, unless it's held in a nonprofit. So, I mean, one of the things that certainly I've thought about is, I should give my house to the Permaculture Institute. And Bill Mollison did this in Australia. And what I get in return for that gift is lifetime residency, right? Now that house does not pay tax. Now it is not subject to property tax. Now it's interesting, this system was set up by corporations. That's why we have the Ford Foundation, the Chrysler Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, all these big foundations, was how can we protect some of our assets, and how can we direct policy through a nonprofit, which has less answerable to the government, right? So that model is now being used by individuals, and it's working so far. And I'm sure they're going to come up with a way to say, well, if your nonprofit is worth less than $5 million, then you don't get the free ride.